Hi everyone, and welcome to the Joy of Poeting. I am Anne Marie Wells. So I'm going to spotlight for everyone. There we go. Last week, for some reason, I couldn't find the spotlight for everyone, and I pinned myself. So when I record it, I'm on like the main view. Anyway, I figured it out this time. Thank you for being here. We are going to explore the ghazal together, a traditionally Arabic form, a set of couplets, usually between 5 and 15 couplets that follow a specific pattern. I wrote the names down because they have specific names. The matla is the first couplet of a ghazal that establishes the theme of the poem and also what the end rhyme is going to be. The opposite of that is the makta, which is the final couplet, that traditionally has some sort of reference to the poet, some sort of self-reference, either the poet's name or a reference to who they are as a person. And then the radif, which is the repeated word or phrase at the end of the second line of each couplet. Another traditional element of a ghazal is that each couplet itself is a complete thought, a complete phrase. So each couplet typically ends in a period because once that couplet is over, you're on to the next and it's its own sentence. Does that mean that it always has to be that way? No, you can break some rules. And I'm going to share with you 3 different ghazals, and then I'm going to attempt to write my own. For my own ghazal, I I wrote one at the end of August during the 3-day chapbook contest with a public library in Michigan somewhere. And the theme of the 3-day chapbook contest was room for love. And so I wrote this ghazal with room for love as my radif, but I don't like it. I was rushed. It was a 3-day chapbook contest. You're like putting something together. You don't really have time to thoroughly revise. And so I'm going to revisit my idea for that. I'm not going to do like a revision of it. I'm just going to redo it, but with room for love as my radif. Okay, let's take a look at some of these ghazals. This first one by Jan Henry Gray, Ghazal of Oranges. On New Year's Eve, my father overfills the baskets with oranges, mangoes, grapes, grapefruits, other citrus too, but mostly oranges. The morning of the first, he opens every window to let the new year in. In Chinatown, red bags sag with mustard greens and mandarin oranges. A farmer in a fallow season kneels to know the dirt, more silt than soil. He wipes his brow and mumbles to his dog, time to give up this crop of oranges. The woman knows she let herself say too much to someone undeserving. She lays her penance on her sister's doorstep, a case of expensive oranges. At the Whitney, I take a photo of a poem in a book behind the glass. Above it, a painting, smears of blue, Frank O'Hara, his messy oranges. The handsome server speaks with his hands. Tonight is grilled octopus with braised fennel and olives topped with pepper crusts, caracaras, and blood oranges. No one at the table looks up, ashamed by the prices on the chic menus. The busser fills my water and I inhale him, his faraway scent of oranges. 7th grade, Southern California, we monitored the daily smog alerts. Red, stay inside. White, play outside. I forget what warning orange is. Clutch was serious about art and said our final projects could be whatever, performative, like just show up with a wheelbarrow full of oranges. Jan, in all of those first 6 years, why is all you can remember this? The mist rising in the sunny air as you watched her peeling oranges. So in this one, we see the matla, the first couplet on New Year's Eve, my father overfills the baskets with oranges. Oh, that was another thing I forgot. So typically the first line and second line have the exact same word. And then following that, the second line of every couplet has that same radif. I forgot to mention. So just traditionally, it'll say the same word in the first couplet, and then it'll just repeat in the second line. And then, oh, and then we have the Makta at the end, and you see the reference to his name, Jan. We'll go on to Stephanie Rogers, Fat Girl Ghazal. At the bar, I ran into a frat boy who called me a fat girl. He said, "No one wants to sleep with a fucking fat girl." I opened my thighs, joked with him, "Pretty please." Later, I mascara wrecked my pillow, a crying fat girl. Once, a homeless man freaked out when I ignored him. He yelled, "Move, you stupid bitch, you fucking fat girl." I won't lie. I called my sister while sobbing on the toilet. She said, "What is wrong with people?" I said, "Fat girls." My boyfriend says he loves my waves of flab, my breasts, all his exes, skinny. Is he just pretending to like a fat girl? Get over yourself, I tell myself in mirrors, in reflections, because I'm tired of playing the funny one, the fat girl. A driver screamed, "Get your fat ass out of the street." I looked down, picked up my pace, ashamed, a fat girl. I suck in my stomach, pull back my shoulders, envious. The blondes who ride my block on bikes aren't fat girls. Some days I accidentally heave my weight in public. People stare. Don't sit there. Oh shit, another fat girl. I'm taught to either love my body, hate it, love it, hate it. Even friends think, "Steph, you're pretty," for a fat girl. In this poem, we see fat girl as the radif. The matla here establishes what the theme of the poem is going to be. And then in the makta, at the end, we see the self-reference of the poet in the last line. I've also seen it in the penultimate line in the top line of the couplet. And then we have Ghazal from Tracy K. Smith, which deviates a little bit from some of the norms here. Ghazal. The sky is a dry, pitiless white. The wide rows stretch on into death. Like famished birds, my hands strip each stalk of its stolen crop, our name. History is a ship forever setting sail. On either shore, mountains of men, oceans of bone, an engine whose teeth shred all that is not our name. Can you imagine what will sound from us, what will rend and claim when we find ourselves alone with all we've ever sought, our name? Or perhaps what we seek lives outside of speech. Or no, what we seek lives outside of speech, like a tribe of goats on a mountain above a lake, whose hooves nick away at rock. Our name is blown from tree to tree, scattered by the breeze. Who am I to say what, in that marriage, is lost? For all I know, the grass has caught our name. Having risen from moan to growl, growl to a hound's low bray, the voices catch. No priest, no sinner has yet been taught our name. Will it thunder up the call of time, or lie quiet as bedrock beneath our feet? Our name, our name, our name, our fraught, fraught name. So in this one, you see a few different deviations. We see in the first matla that this word at the end of the first line would typically be name, but here we have death. And then we do see the repetition of the radif of the word name. At the end in the makta, we don't see a direct self-reference to Tracy K. Smith. There's no Tracy here. However, I feel like she's playing a little game with the word name. Our name, our name, our name, our name, as if saying, my name is this name, and that is my self-reference here. Okay. I'm going to get my notebook open and give it a shot. So I want to just mention that when there are these kinds of rules for a poetic form, they're more like guidelines. And that is not to say that if you deviate from those guidelines, that what you have is not that poetic form. A poetic form is a poetic form just because you say it is, in my opinion. Okay. Okay. Let's see how I do. I always feel a little bit nervous before I start. What if I can't think of anything? Similar to the rib cage and the golden shovel, when I write a ghazal, I have in mind the key phrase ahead of time. So in this case, I have room for love. And I'm trying to not even think of my last poem so that I'm not tempted to try and just rewrite that old one since I want to do a different one and better. Okay, let's see. Um, I'm going to start with I sit with our son in our living room, our room for love. Okay. I sit with our son in our living room, our room for love. The lessons I've learned about making room for love. Here's my matla. Here's my radif. That's enough. Let's see. Hmm. Not every house I've lived in has been a home. Not every room I've lived in has been a room for love. Even in that tiny studio beneath the dentist's office. Dentist's office. I've lived beneath a dentist not once, but twice. Even in that tiny studio beneath the dentist's office. Different dentists, too. even in that tiny studio beneath the dentist's office, where there was barely room to live, there was room for love. Before, uh, before we were we, I lived. Um, before we were we, I lived in my own studio, German Shepherd at the foot of the bed. I made room for her love. I'm going to put this in brackets because I already used the word studio, and I know that I'm using room for love over and over and over, but I don't want to be, I don't know. I'm not loving that. So I'm putting that in brackets for me to return to another time and potentially change. I like the idea of just putting something in brackets and coming back to it later. Whether it's a word in a poem or something that you're doing in your life, put it in brackets. Come back to it later. Change it if you want to, or keep it if you want to. Okay, before we were we, I lived in my own studio. German Shepherd at the foot of my bed. I made room for her love. This needs to be a semicolon. I made room for her love. Let's see. Where my twin bed in my childhood home. Where I slept with my books, journal, stuffed turtle, and stuffed turtle. Hmm. Let's see. I need to change this. Where my twin bed in my childhood. Okay, I learned in my twin bed, my childhood home, as a child, sleeping. I learned in my twin bed as a child, sleeping with my books, journal, and stuffed turtle, how to make room for love. Up until I moved in with my partner, I slept with books and my journal in my bed with me. Usually I have a bigger bed, so I can have space for junk in my bed. Well, I guess books and a journal aren't junk, but it's nice to just have them around. But now I have to share it with a person. And so there's no room for my books to also sleep with us. I guess I have to make the room. Okay, I'm gonna see what I have so far. One, two, three, four. I'm at my fifth couplet, so I could potentially end it after this. We'll see how it goes. I'm gonna just do a recap. I sit with our son in our living room, our room for love. The lessons I've learned about making room for love. Not every house I've lived in has been a home. Not every room I've lived in has been a room for love. Even in that tiny studio beneath that dentist office, where there was barely room to live, there was barely room, I'm going to put for us to live, to establish that I'm talking to somebody else. Even in that tiny studio beneath the dentist office, where there was barely room for us to live, there was room for I'm going to put us to love. So there can be little deviations to the Radif. Um, we saw in Jan's poem that instead of using the word oranges, like the plural, he used orange is, like the verb is, as like a play on the sound. I've also seen ghazals where um, the radif is a rhyming motif. So, for example, instead of just using room for love or room for us to love, etc., there might be tomb for love or the room above, that kind of thing. There's there's room for creative license slash love in your ghazal. Okay, so where was I? There was room for us to love. Before we were we, I lived in my own. Maybe I'll just put I lived on my own. I, before we were we, I lived. mm, I'm gonna put address to address. Before we were we, I lived address to address, German Shepherd at the foot of my bed. I made room for her love. I learned in my twin bed as a child, sleeping with my books, journal, and stuffed turtle, how to make room for love. And maybe I'm going to move this one so there's more of a timeline here. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to put that first here, and then this one, I'm going to just reverse these. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. Mm-hmm. Um, let's see. How does one teach abundance within scarcity? When there is no room, when there is no room, there is still room for love. That will my son learn this lesson from me? Did I learn from my mother? in her many rooms for love. Someday he'll cry for me. Mama, from his own room. There, he'll learn how to be a boy and a man making his own room for love. From his own. Uh, from his, yeah, I guess I'll put room. Okay. Let's see how it goes. I might change it. I sit with our son in our living room, our room for love. The lessons I've learned, I need to change this. I don't like that already. The lessons I've learned about making room. Um, okay. Maybe reflecting on. I sit with our son in our living room, our room for love. Maybe I need to also establish that he's a baby. I sit with our infant son in our living room, our room for love, reflecting on the lessons I've learned about making room for love, making and making room. This might be a too long line, but I'll read I'll rewrite it. I sit with our infant son in our living room, our room for love, reflecting on the lessons I've learned about making room for love. Not every house I've lived in has been a home. Not every room I've lived in, maybe not every room I've slept in. Not every house I've lived in has been a home. Not every room I've slept in has been a room for love. I learned in my twin bed as a child, sleeping with my books, journal, and stuffed turtle, how to make room for love. Before I lived address to address, German Shepherd at the foot of my bed. I made room for her love. Even in that tiny studio beneath the dentist's office, where there was barely room for us to live, there was room for us to love. How does one teach abundance within scarcity, within a world of scarcity? No, within, uh, I don't know. I'm going to change this. I'm going to put this in brackets. That when there is no room, there is still room for love. Will my son learn this lesson from me? Did I learn from my mother in her many rooms for love? Someday he'll cry for me, Mama, from his own room, where he'll learn how to be a boy and a man, making his own room for love. All right, I'm just going to take a minute to rewrite this because it's a little bit chaotic, and then we'll see if that is still how I want it to be. I sit with our infant son in our living room, our room for love. Reflecting on the lessons I've learned about making and making. This is one line. Room, oops, making room for love. Like, not every house I've lived in has been a home. Not every room I've slept in has been a room for love. Let's see. I learned in my twin bed, but that seems too, I don't know, trite. Like, that's not. Okay, maybe um there I am. I love to say there it is. There I am. There she be in poems. I noticed. There I am, 6 years old. I'm getting a little bit more specific. The universality lives in the specific. There I am, 6 years old in my twin bed, sleeping with my books, journal, stuffed turtle, learning to make room for love. There, I like that better. And then, um, and again, before we we, or maybe I want to make this a capital. Before we were we, I lived address to address. But I'm going to put lived here in brackets now because I feel like I'm doing a little bit too much living places. And again, before we were we, I don't know, hopped address to address. I tumbled address to I like tumble because I just kind of plopped and ended up places like willy-nilly. And again, before we were we, I tumbled address to address. German Shepherd at the foot of the bed. I made room for her love, even in that tiny studio beneath the dentist's office, where there was barely room for us to breathe. There was room for us to love. Okay. Then how does one teach abundance within scarcity? That's gotta go. I don't like that. How does one um mm, maybe I'll just take this out completely and go, will our son learn that learn this lesson from us, from me? Did I learn from my mother? You from yours? Um, their rooms for love someday. You'll cry for, maybe I'll just say, he'll cry, Mama, from his own room where, okay, there's too much learning happening too, so I don't want learn. Someday he'll cry, Mama, from his own room where he'll grow into a boy and a man. Where he'll grow into a boy and a man into his own room for love. All right, that's better. Okay. I sit with our infant son in our living room, our room for love, reflecting on the lessons I've learned about making and making room for love. Like, not every house I've lived in has been a home. Not every room I've slept in has been a room for love. There I am, 6 years old in my twin bed, sleeping with my books, journal, stuffed turtle, learning to make room for love. And again, before we were we, I tumbled address to address, German Shepherd at the foot of the bed. I made room for her love. Even in that tiny studio beneath the dentist's office, where there was barely room for us to breathe, there was room for us to love. Will our son learn this lesson from us? From me? Did I learn from my mother? You from yours? There are rooms for love. Someday he'll cry mama from his own room, where he'll grow into a boy and a man, into his own room for love. Okay, I think that's what I'm going with for today. Do I have questions from anybody who's here today? Oh, I went late. I guess this one took me a while. Or any comments, or if you have a guzzle that you love that you'd like to share?
There we go. Hi. That was
Hi.
good. It was interesting watching you like go through the process. And I think it makes me feel a little bit better about my own process that it's kind of like this, wait, that doesn't work, and like go back and like redo, which was this it was fun to watch you go through the process. Um, I actually wrote one of the longer books that I'm trying to write that I'm working on. She has a book of ghazals. Um, but I didn't really know what they were. I just knew that it was ancient, like Arabic and about love. So this was really cool. So I'm definitely, I wrote everything down. I'm going to try that next time. I'm excited to try it. So thank you for showing that. That's fun.
I'm glad. If you come up with one, I'd love to read it. So send it to me. Send it my way if you
I
want to.
might.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then Mickey, I saw that you unmuted.
Yeah, hi Anne-Marie. Good to see you again. I I have a ghazal that I've been working on, so it was cool just to hear more about the form in the beginning and then see you work through it. And so I want to like it's one of the poems that I really want to edit. That it's in my manuscript, and so I'm looking forward to watching the replay of this video to um, get the juices in my mind flowing on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. And I'm gonna just throw it up on YouTube after this. So
Okay,
that's
great.
where you can find it. And I always post the YouTube videos on my website as well. So if you go to my website events and then the Joy of Poeting, there will be a list of all of them there as well.
Oh, so organized. Thank you.
Thank you. The link to my YouTube or the link to the website or both. Or what link, Aaliyah? Both? Okay.
The
No
link that
problem.
you're talking about.
Sure. Yeah, I can. One second. Doot, doot, doot. Okay. So throwing the link up in the chat, and then if you just scroll beneath this like opening image, that's where I have my previous ones. So um, I have the ribcage and Dada poem from when I was trying to do it on Twitch, and those are the only two that turned out okay. And then I have Abecedarian and Ekphrasis, which are the two that I did the last 2 weeks. Any other questions for everybody or from anybody before I close out? You can also always send me a message on the socials or something if you do think of something after the fact. I'm happy to chat with folks. Okay, well, I'm gonna say goodnight then, and thank you so much for joining. Oh, let me put up the poll. I always forget. So if you would like to request a poetic form, then now is the time. Oh, and if you haven't already, we have 2 more workshops in the poetry marathon. So tomorrow we have somatic writing with Dr. Rebecca Chapman, and then we also have submission strategies with Kamari Carter Hawkins. And you can find those in the link in my bio and Instagram and also on my Facebook page and also no, just on my socials. It's not on my website. Thank you, Spencer. Thanks for joining. All right. If you haven't put your request in the poll, you have about 5 seconds. Okay. So the result of our poll is there's only one person requested, so it should That'll be the ones we do. Oh, haiku. How nice. Okay. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But actually, shorter poems can be more challenging. So last week, one person had requested the loon, which is the American haiku. So maybe I'll do both a haiku and American haiku for next week since they're so short. Just gonna write myself a little note. Haiku and loon. All right. Thank you, everybody. And I'll see you next week, maybe. And if not, then you can see me on YouTube. Okay. Bye.